The New York Jets head coach and general manager search is in full swing. Here on Black Monday, the organization has requested to interview a surplus of candidates at both positions. We'll break down every candidate's resume and much more, all coming up here on a Monday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer Mr. Rich Cimini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer and Jets legend Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
Hello everyone and welcome into another edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. Our first episode of the offseason. The New York Jets wrapped up their season yesterday with a 32-20 win over the division rival Miami Dolphins, a home win at that, to include what was a very, very, very disappointing 2024 season. But here we are in the offseason. We're going to have a ton of exciting content coming up here, whether it's the head coach, GM search, overall free agency talk, draft talk. There are going to be a ton of fun plans on this channel for the offseason, so stay tuned. First of many episodes this offseason, we're going to try to do daily shows here on the channel. We're going to certainly be doing at least, 5 to 6 shows a week, so stay tuned. Appreciate all of your support. You guys are the ones who make this show possible. Smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and don't forget about our membership raffle. Every membership you gift gets you a ticket into our raffle, and Chris J comes in ultra early and starts the memberships off for today's show. He says, Connor Legend, he was the first like, smash the like button, like Chris J, and he goes ahead and he drops 2 gifted memberships. Our guy Chris J deserves a Jets check. There we go. Chris J coming in extra early and gifting a membership. Gifted memberships get you a ticket into our membership raffle. I'm going to read out all of the names so far. You guys have been very generous with the membership, so it means a lot. Here is your name and how many entries you have in the raffle so far. Mother Effing Chew with 8. DB94 tied for the lead with 20. Daniel Berry Sports Highlights 1. Jimmy Jets 10. Chris J 13. Marvelous 33 1. Dan the Jets fan 1. Rick Kent 15. Mike D's Nuts 10. Mr. McMoney 2. 25 2. Leany 5. And Genergy 14. So smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Appreciate all of your support. And here it is. Today was the day the Jets could really get all of their interview requests out for both the head coach and GM job here on Black Monday. So they did just that, requesting a ton of candidates to speak with. I'll read you off all of the candidates at both the head coach and GM job. The Jets sent their formal interview requests today to the team that they're currently with. As for the head coaching position, they requested an interview Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores and Vikings quarterback coach, a familiar face to the Jets organization, Josh McCown, Chiefs offensive coordinator and former Bears head coach Matt Nagy, 49ers quarterback coach and the son of legendary Pro Football Hall of Fame quarterback is Brian Griese, the 49ers quarterback coach, Broncos defensive coordinator Vance Joseph, Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady, Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, Steelers offensive coordinator Arthur Smith, Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. That's it for the head coaches they interviewed. Obviously, Rex Ryan is scheduled to interview for the position as well, which that interview will take place tomorrow. As for the general manager position, Bengals senior personnel executive Trey Brown, Buccaneers assistant general manager Mike Greenberg, Vikings senior vice president, of player personnel Ryan Grigson, Rams senior personnel executive Ray Farmer, Chiefs assistant general manager Mike Borgonzi, Eagles assistant general manager Alec Halaby, and obviously they completed interviews with Louis Riddick, Jim Nagy, John Robinson, and Thomas Dimitroff for the position as well. So those are all the interviews the Jets have had or are expected to have in the coming days. I'll start with the head coaching. All those names there that we're going to break down. Brian Flores, I'll make it pretty quick with him. We all know who he is. Head coaching experience in the division with the Miami Dolphins. 3 seasons, 24-25. His tenure didn't end the way he wanted to. Obviously ended with him and general manager Chris Grier and owner Stephen Ross not really on the right page with quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. He later sued the NFL for racial discrimination. So his tenure didn't end the way they wanted to, but he has head coaching experience, which I think is a priority as the Jets conduct this head coaching search. So Flores is certainly an interesting name. Now he's with the Vikings, doing great stuff over over there. I mean, third fewest points per game. They rank third in defensive DVOA. So he's just done a great job kind of revitalizing, that Minnesota Vikings defensive unit. So Flores right now sits at number 2 on my list, just behind Mike Vrabel. Ultimately, I think Flores could be the Jets' best option, just because I think Mike Vrabel, a Vrabel Patriots reunion seems pretty much likely now after they went ahead and canned Gerard Mayo, a one-year wonder is Gerard Mayo, who was groomed for several years for the job by head coach Bill Belichick. But before we keep it going, 10 gifted memberships from our guy Jimmy Jets. Let's give him a Jets cheer. Our guy Jimmy Jets, an absolute legend, getting him 10 more tickets into the raffle. Like I said, every membership you give gets you a ticket into our raffle. If you hear your name called, you are now a member. And thank Jimmy Jets in the chat, an absolute legend here. Nick Russo, Michael Davila, Jets Pauly, Schnitzel, effing Jets for life, John, Big Rush 2122, Big Will, Matthew, Mark Ferraro. You were all members of the Connor Long NY Flight Jets Talk YouTube channel. Thank Jimmy Jets in the comments. An absolute legend, Jimmy. That means the world. Appreciate your support. Hope you had a great holidays. Happy New Year and all the above to you. It means a lot. Appreciate your support. Back where I left off, Flores. So he's, like I said, number 2 on my list, just behind Vrabel. I think he is most likely the Jets' best candidate, kind of if you eliminate Vrabel from the equation, which I think will happen. I think he ends up landing in New England, but it's not a foregone conclusion. As much as it makes so much sense, his prior relationship, how appealing the job is, a franchise quarterback, a top 4 pick in this draft, over $100 million in cap room. Crazier things have happened. So I don't want to draw any conclusions here. Let me just be clear. I think there's a shot he could potentially go to the Jets, but if I had to bet right now, I say he ends up in New England with his former team, the New England Patriots. So that's my bio there on Brian Flores. Before we move on to Josh McCown, our guy John pays it forward with a gifted membership. That is a raffle ticket for you, John. Give him a Jets chant. Means the world. Appreciate you tuning in, and I appreciate you going ahead and gifting a membership here on the show. And the membership went to Matt Azee. Matt Azee, you are now a member. Thank John in the chat, an absolute legend coming through with the gifted memberships in the footsteps of our guy Jimmy Jets, who dropped a 10 spot of channel memberships just moments ago. Let's move over to Josh McCown now. 49ers quarterback coach, and he's no stranger to not only the Jets organization, but the New York media market. Obviously spent a few seasons serving as the Jets quarterback, 2017, 2018. He's 45 years old in his first season as the Vikings quarterback coach. He's done great work in basically kind of reviving the career of his former Jets teammate, Sam Darnold, who basically I'd say is playing at a top 5, top 7 level for a quarterback right now, and it shows it where he ranks in yards and touchdowns throughout the whole regular season, really. So I think Sam has done a great job, and he's credited Josh McCown a ton. I think that's really interesting relationship there. Obviously, they have the past with the Jets, and now McCown's essentially coaching his former Jets teammate, which I think is something really interesting. I'm a huge fan that they're interviewing McCown for the head coaching job. I've said this before, and I'm not saying he's a head coach candidate. Just take a listen here. He interviewed for the Texans head coaching job in 2020 and 2021. He had no NFL coaching experience in any level whatsoever. That was the year after he retired. He interviewed for the Texans head coaching job. So he knows what it's like to interview for big time jobs, but I think he's a legit OC candidate. So why not get his thoughts on what he would what his day-to-day operations would look like? And then, hey, depending on who you bring in a head coach, you could say to them, well, I think if Flores comes in, McCown would most likely be his OC. But depending on who the head coach is, I think the Jets could go, hey, Josh McCown, obviously we know him. We have a prior history with him. He came in for an interview. He was very impressive. If you're looking for an OC here, I think McCown's a strong candidate. I think that's something to keep an eye on here with this McCown interview. I think he's a very strong offensive coordinator candidate. If they gave that coach, I think the chances of the Jets giving Josh McCown a head coaching job is less than 1%. But can't hurt to interview him for the position. I'm a fan of this move here by the Jets. I really like it. So here we're gonna keep it going. So we spoke about McCown. We spoke about Flores. Next up on this list, who the Jets are scheduled to requested to interview with, is former Bears head coach, current Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator Matt Nagy. Now, Nagy's a really interesting name. I know a lot of people have been opposed to him as of late when his name has come up in potential head coaching discussions. I mean, when we really think about it, he checks some boxes. Prior head coaching experience, and the reputation that he gets is not as bad as his record really was. He had a winning record after spending a few seasons as the Bears head coach. Like he went 12-4 in 2017. He was voted NFL Coach of the Year, and then after that, he kind of just it was like a snowball rolling down a hill. They ended up going 22 and 27 in the next 3 seasons. But he has head coaching experience. He's worked with a few different quarterbacks. He's from the Andy Reid coaching tree. I mean, he began his coaching career working as an intern with Reid in 2008 with the Eagles. Then he became the quarterback coach when Reid took the head coaching job with the Chiefs in 2013, and now he's back with them as their offensive coordinator after he had a failed run, so to speak, or he was fired. I don't even necessarily want to say failed. He brought a team to the playoffs, and he had a winning record. Once he was fired, I guess is the word I'm going to use. Once he was fired from Chicago, he returned to the Chiefs coaching staff where he serves as an offensive coordinator. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not that hard to uncover the juggernaut that is that is unlocking the max potential of Patrick Mahomes. But, hey, he's coming from a legitimate coaching tree. And by the way, the Chiefs have played like turnover-free football. He knows what it's like to be around an elite coaching staff. You have to give him some credit for their offensive success. I think that's fair to say. Like, he doesn't deserve a ton of credit, but you have to give him some credit. I mean, he's the offensive coordinator. Head coaching experience. Would I be going crazy if Nagy got would I be happy if Nagy got the job? Not particularly. Would I absolutely hate it like I think most fans would? No. Head coaching experience, brought a team to the playoffs, and comes from a legit coaching tree. Those are some interesting traits to keep in mind from a guy like Jim Nagy. So, anyways, that's where I am with Jim Nagy. Speaking of offensive minds, another candidate the Jets requested to interview is Greasy. Greasy, obviously, his dad played quarterback in this league. He's an interesting candidate because he's just in his 3rd season as the 49ers quarterback coach. Prior to that, he was an NFL analyst on Monday Night Football, the pregame show over there. So, where I stand with him, again, I think this could be something similar to a Josh McCown scenario. You request to interview him for the head coaching position, and then boom, maybe you're impressed, maybe you're impressed by Brian Greasy, and you say, hey, you bring in a head coach. Hey, we were impressed by this guy. We're going to refer you to him as a potential offensive coordinator candidate. I think that's the way you got to look at it. And I see you guys in the chat supporting my McCown take, so I appreciate that. I think that's the way you look at both the Greasy interview and the McCown interview, because both of them are they're both quarterback coaches, and they've never been a coordinator in their career. Never been a coordinator before. And again, Greasy's relatively new to the coaching space, at least with the 49ers. So that's where I stand on the McCown-Greasy quarterback coach interviews for the head coaching position. Keeping it moving, Vance Joseph, the Broncos defensive coordinator. The Jets requested to speak with him as of today, according to the Athletics. Diana Rossini, 52 years old. He's someone I've expected to be a hot name, circling around head coach conversations. I mean, Broncos led the league in sacks this year, 3rd in points allowed during the regular season. Pat Surtain, another great year. Linebacker Nick Bonito, another first-time Pro Bowler. They finished 3rd in quarterback hits as well. So, I'm not a fan of Joseph right now. Honestly, I saw that report. I'm like, why are you requesting an interview? I am not a fan of Vance Joseph. And our Broncos fan in here, DB94, says, Vance Joseph is so trash at head coach. That's what I was just about to get into. His record as a head coach, this is where I stand. I think Vance Joseph is a perfect example, kind of Steve Spagnuolo, to those two guys who are great coordinators, but I don't think would be good head coaches. And both of them have had runs as head coaches. We're going to focus on Joseph here. Joseph spent a few seasons serving as the Broncos head coach, 2 seasons, 2017, 2018. He went 11-21 over the 2 years there. 5-11 in his first year, 6-10 in his second. So I'm steering clear of Vance Joseph. He also had some, I think, sexual harassment charges pressed on him a few years ago. So let's not swim in those waters. I think the Jets have to steer clear of Joseph. Like I said, I think he is just a perfect example of someone who's a great coordinator and isn't a particularly great head coach. And that's okay. That's okay. That's why we see coordinators like Steve Spagnuolo just sit around with the Chiefs for so long. Like, why would Vance Joseph want to leave his job as the Broncos defensive coordinator? Like, they've been a fun team this season. Why would he want to leave that job and come to the Jets. I just think, why not give him an interview, but I don't want the Jets to go near him. I don't want the Jets to go near him whatsoever. So that's where I stand on Vance Joseph. Keeping it moving, someone else who I strongly advise the Jets to stay away from is Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. Jets requested to speak with him today. It was a hot name last hiring cycle after the Texans kind of saw that resurgence in 2023. Never got a head coaching job. Now the Jets are going to be the first team to interview him. Most likely 37 years old, started his head coaching career in 2011 with the Washington Commanders, spent 3 seasons with them. Here's the funny part. He was a defensive assistant. He started his coaching career on the defensive side of the ball, which I think is an interesting story, especially for a younger guy like Bobby Slowick. He then went to the 49ers. He joined their staff 2017. And, before he joined the 49ers coaching staff, here's another interesting nugget. He was actually a data analyst at PFF. So Bobby Slowick has a pretty interesting backstory, which I find pretty funny. Out of all the candidates the Jets requested to speak with 49ers, he was the defensive quality control coach. He was an offensive assistant, offensive pass game specialist, and a pass game coordinator. So he served in various different roles over his tenure in San Francisco. Then in 2022, he took the Texans head coaching job, 3rd season with them now. They've struggled this season. I don't think that's an understatement. I don't think that's exaggerating, really. Overall, they've struggled. Here, I'll read you some of their numbers this season. 26th in offensive DVOA, 22nd in yards per game, and 19th in points per game. And C.J. Stroud, who had a great rookie year last season, has really seen a steep decline in his play. I think that's fair to say. I really do. Their offense was among the league's top unit last year. Now I say they're average at best from what they've put on tape thus far. That's where I stand. So Slowick, he's 37. Give him a few more years in Houston. See what Houston's offense could do over the next few years. Then let's reconsider him in head coach discussions. But as of now, I don't want anything to do with Bobby Slowick. That's where I am. Speaking of offensive coordinators, Arthur Smith, former Falcons head coach, Jets requested to speak with him. He's one of few head coach candidates this hiring cycle that actually has head coaching experience. 3 seasons with the Falcons as their head coach, 2021 through 2023, recording a 21-30 record. I think he had 3 7-10 seasons. Never made the playoffs. He had, again, similar to Cliff Kingsbury, who surprisingly the Jets did not request to speak to. We're going to get into that in a minute. Before the Falcons hired him, the Jets interviewed him for the head coach vacancy. Ultimately, they hired Saleh that year. So they interviewed him, and then this offseason, they spoke to him about potentially joining the offensive staff in a consulting role before he took the offensive coordinator job with the Steelers. Now, look, the Steelers offense had a hot start to the season. We've seen their numbers pretty much decrease over the past month. Russell Wilson got off to a hot start once he was put in. Justin Fields started the first 6 games. He went 4-2. Then Russ was fully healed from injury. They threw him in. He had an okay first few starts, but then his play kind of has really declined over the last month, along with the rest of the offensive unit. Smith is similar to Nagy for me. I wouldn't be ecstatic if they hired him, but I wouldn't absolutely hate it. Like, if you think about it, Arthur Smith, I know he isn't the attractive, sexy name that a lot of fans are looking for. He's not a Mike Vrabel, a Brian Flores, and Aaron Glenn, but he's had coaching experience. He's an offensive-minded guy, and he's worked with a ton of different quarterbacks. And by the way, he's known to hold players accountable. When he coached the Falcons, they had the fewest penalties all 3 years he was there. Like, he's going to hold guys accountable. Offensive mind, head coach experience, knows how to work with quarterbacks. Like, if you actually think about it, a guy like Arthur Smith checks a ton of boxes here. Smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Keep the questions coming in the chat. Don't worry. I'm going to be sure to get to all your questions once we're done breaking down every single candidate here on this list. We just wrapped up with Arthur Smith. So let's move over to the GM candidates. The Jets requested at least to speak with. I expect they will be able to interview with all of them. Trey Brown, he's currently with the Cincinnati Bengals right now. He's serving as a personnel executive. So he's previously a scout with the Patriots from 2010, 2012. And then he had a stint with the Eagles for 7 seasons. Then he went over to the XFL, spent 2 seasons there, one with the Birmingham Iron and one with the St. Louis Battlehawks. St. Louis Battlehawks, fun fact, that's actually the team that Jets radio analyst and former Jets tight end Anthony Beck coaches. So fun fact, fun little nugget there. And then in 2022, he's promoted with the Bengals to senior personnel executive. He's served in the role ever since. The last 2 off seasons, he's actually been he was a strong front runner for the Raiders GM job and the Patriots, but ultimately he decided to stay in Cincinnati. So from what I'm hearing, I read some articles up on him. He supposedly plays a huge role in Cincinnati's overall, personnel decisions, front office conversations. So he's an interesting name to watch. He helps a lot with the draft. Personally, he's a huge personnel guy. Doesn't have any GM experience. I'd say if I had to rate him from ranging from an A to an F, I'd probably put him in that C tier. Again, he's someone I wouldn't love, I wouldn't hate. I definitely think there's better options out there on the GM market, though. I think the Jets can do a little bit better than Trey Brown. That's what I'll say for Trey Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. Moving on, Mike Greenberg, Tampa Bay Buccaneers assistant general manager, the Long Island native who grew up a Jet fan. Second season serving as their assistant general manager, 16th with the Bucs organization. He's known for being the cap expert really under general manager Jason Licht. Some of the guys he re-signed this offseason was a great offseason for Greenberg. Re-signed Mike Evans, Levante David, Baker Mayfield, Antoine Winfield, a ton of different players. So he's in his 15th season with them, several different roles: vice president of football administration, director of football administration, coordinator of football administration. And here's a little nugget that I think could play a role a bit in his candidacy for the job, so to speak. He served as a football administration intern with the Jets in 2009, 2010. So not only does he have a tie to the organization, that Mike Tannenbaum hired him as an intern, and Tannenbaum, who's assisting with the search now. So Greenberg is one of the first timers I would actually really like, just because he's still on the younger side, and I think we need a guy who's going to be able to manage the cap. If he brings a strong talent evaluator with him as a potential assistant general manager, you could sell me on Mike Greenberg and Liam Cohen. You could. I know both of them are first timers, but you can potentially sell. That's a first time duo I would take. Another first time duo I would take is Aaron Glenn and Ray Agnew. I think ultimately that's what the head coach, the head coach and GM, that's what the new regime is going to look like. But I mean, you could sell me on Mike Greenberg and Liam Cohen as two first timers, 1,000%. Let's see, where are we? So we just wrapped up Greenberg. Let's see all the other candidates the Jets they're expected to interview. Ryan Grigson, third season with the Vikings as a personnel executive. He also spent a few years with the Browns and the Seahawks. Most importantly, though, spent 5 seasons as the general manager of the Colts. He brought them to an AFC championship game, won 2 division titles in his first 3 years, and then after back-to-back 8-8 seasons in 2015, 2016, they let him go. Ultimately, his record was 49-31, which is very, very solid for a GM, especially a candidate interviewing for the Jets job right now, as you know what we've seen from a record standpoint over the past decade plus, over the past 14 years plus. So I think Grigson's a really interesting candidate. The one knock is he wasn't able to build a stable offensive line. Well, you look, the Jets have 4 of the 5 pieces on their offensive line stable now for the first time in forever. So that's not a concern. Honestly, Grigson, with winning experience as a general manager, I'd put him right up in there in that A tier. I'd put him a little bit below Thomas Dimitroff. I'd say he's probably my second or third choice right now, behind Thomas Dimitroff, potentially behind John Dorsey. So he's right up there for me. If the Jets hired Ryan Grigson, I'd absolutely love it. I'd love it. General manager experience, brought a team to the AFC championship game, recorded 2 division titles, over his tenure. Sign me up for Ryan Grigson. All day, every day, baby. Give me Ryan Grigson as GM. Absolutely love it. Now, Ray Farmer of the Los Angeles Rams is expected to interview for the job. He plays a huge role from what I've seen in their draft day decisions. We're working with general manager Les Snead. He's basically helped them find diamonds in the rough, time in and time out. He's another interesting name here. He has general manager experience with the Browns 2 seasons, 2014 and 2015, after he was promoted from the general manager position. So he kind of worked his way up the ranks in the Browns front office. So he was actually suspended as a general manager in 2015 for, quote, sending texts to his coaches about play calling during games. After that, he was later fired. Didn't have much success during his first stint as a GM. 2 seasons, overall record of 10-22, going 7-9 in his first year, and then 3-13 in his second season. So has general manager experience, is a part of a successful front office right now. Didn't particularly have a ton of success as a general manager. Yeah, obviously the suspension, the record there isn't pretty. I see Jimmy Jet saying Farmer's a Rooney Rule interview. That's potentially the case, because they do have to interview one more minority candidate. This will be their one more, because they interviewed Louis Riddick, who was their first minority candidate to interview for the general manager job. So, it could be that, but where I'd put him from like an A to F scale, I'd probably put him C, because he has GM experience. It wasn't great. Now he's a part of a front office. I don't want him. I wouldn't be happy, I'll say, if the Jets were to go ahead and bring in Ray Farmer. I don't think that'll be the case, though. I don't think he's going to be in the top 5 guys the Jets are really going to consider for the positions. That's where I am on Ray Farmer. Mike Borgonzi is expected to interview for the job, a name we've heard a lot. The end of last season. So he climbed up the ranks really in the Chiefs front office. He's been with them since 2009. He's been an administrator of college scouting, manager of football operations, pro scout, assistant director of pro scouting, director of player personnel, director of football operations. I mean, from what I'm seeing, he's played a huge role in their success recently from a roster building standpoint. Borgonzi's an interesting one because he has so much experience, especially with the Chiefs, and he hasn't gotten a GM job. So I think there's something interesting there. I think he's someone the Jets are strongly going to consider. Rich Cimini said it on his podcast. The Jets are pretty much looking at Borgonzi as a top candidate this hiring cycle. He is, like I said, ton of experience. I think there's only really, as of now, one GM opening, which could be appealing. So I think a lot of these guys are going to be clamoring for the Jets job, so to speak. It's not like there are a ton of GM openings this offseason like we've seen in years past. So Borgonzi, you bring him in. I could see maybe Borgonzi and then Matt Nagy, head coach. They obviously both in KC right now. Borgonzi has a connection with Brian Flores. When Brian Flores was in Kansas City, that could be an interesting pairing. And then Borgonzi has a connection with Mike Vrabel too. So Borgonzi's connections that could be potential head coach candidates are really interesting. So I think he's a candidate the Jets 1,000% need to explore for sure. Moving on, this is the last candidate here on this list before I get into your questions. Take your calls, call into the show, pin comment in the chat, smash the like button, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Keep the questions coming. I'll be sure to break down every single one in the chat. Alec Halaby, the last candidate, he originally joined the Eagles organization as an intern, worked his way all the way up. He was a special assistant to the GM, player personnel assistant, vice president of football operations and strategy. And now he's serving as the assistant general manager. So he's been with them for 17 years. It's a really cool story how he's climbed their ranks as an intern now to their assistant general manager. And he's pretty much been the right-hand man to general manager Howie Roseman, who is one of, if not the best general manager in all of football. So my stance on a guy like Halaby, he's on the younger side. He's an analytics guy with the Eagles. He's had success working with Howie Roseman. From what I've seen, Howie Roseman wants him to stay around as long as humanly possible. An interesting name, potential underrated head coach candidate that Halaby could potentially bring with him is, what's his name, Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. He was with the Chargers as their offensive coordinator, Cowboys as their offensive coordinator. So that's a sneaky pair, I'd say, to keep your eye on if the Jets were to bring in Halaby. But everyone, smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Those are the head coach and GM candidates the Jets are expected to interview. Now I will take your calls if you want to call into the show. Pinned comment in the chat. And then if you want to just throw your question in the chat, and I'll be sure to get to all of them. Let's see. Where do we leave off? Where are we? Italian Eddie Ralph, good to see you in the chat. Appreciate your support. BC, good to see you in the chat. Appreciate you tuning in. DW94, we said what's up. Taking care of business. That's a tough look. Taking care of business. Appreciate your support on the program. Where are we? John. McCown has a huge football brain. The guy was a quarterback in the league for like 18 years because of his big brain. Dude can be a top level OC. That and something I've always referred to as McCown as a potential OC candidate. He retired, I think, after 2019 or 2020 season. So he has this special connection with the players of playing in the league less than a decade ago, playing in the league like less than around 5 years ago. He knows what it's like to be a part of a modern day offense, run a modern day scheme, and he's also able to connect with the players, which I think is something really special with McCown as a potential OC candidate here for sure. Yeah. DB, you're right. Yeah, he was the head coach under Double Doink. Like, something I've noticed about Nagy is he's never gotten a good reputation. Meanwhile, overall, he had a winning record. Overall, he had a winning record as the head coach of the Bears, brought them to the playoffs, was voted AP Coach of the Year. So I don't think he deserves as bad of a reputation as he's kind of received since moving on from Chicago. Italian Eddie Ralph, appreciate you tuning in. Great take on McCown as a possible OC, Connor. Eddie, appreciate your support, and I appreciate the kind words. Jimmy Glenn with McCown would work. Yeah, that would be an interesting pairing. I just don't know how. I don't think they have a direct connection. But again, that could go to my point where, hey, Glenn comes in. I think a name to watch with Glenn as potential OC is Tanner Angstrand in Detroit. But let's say Ben Johnson takes a head coaching job in Engstrand, wants to stay in Detroit, and he ultimately gets the promotion. Glenn goes over to management and says, hey, did you interview anyone who could be a potential OC candidate? Woody Johnson, Rick Spielman, Mike Tannenbaum go, hey, Brian Griese was super impressive in his head coach interview. Let's give him a call. Or Josh McCown was super impressive in his head coach interview. Let's give him a call. So I think that's something interesting to watch there for sure. That's where I am with the Brian Griese and Josh McCown interviews. Let's see, where are we? Jimmy Joseph is only get an interview to satisfy the Rooney Rule. Not necessarily true, because they're interviewing Flores, they're interviewing Glenn, so that's two there, and they've already interviewed Ron Rivera. So he would be the fourth minority now to interview for the head coaching job. You only need two minorities. I think this might be a serious interview here. I think it might, which I'm not a fan of, which I voiced there. Joe Grana. McCown would be acceptable if paired with a proven veteran and effective O-line coach. When you say proven veteran, I'm assuming you're saying at the quarterback position. Yeah, I think there's going to be some sort of bridge plan. The quarterback position next year, effective O-line coach for sure. I think this team needs a legit O-line coach and a legit run game coordinator next season. I think those are two important hires the Jets need to get right next season as positional coaches. Let's see, where are we? Taking care of business. If you want ultimate accountability and preparedness, get Pete Carroll. I would love Pete Carroll as like a president of football operations in the front office. You could sell me on him as a head coach, though, because he's been a head coach in the league recently. Obviously has the history with the Jets in 1994, one and done, fake spike year. So you could sell me on Pete Carroll as a head coach. He also has some good connections over there in Seattle that he could potentially bring with him. A name I've been hearing for general manager with the Jets. So Connor Hughes, I think, originally reported it was Nolan Teasley, their assistant general manager, has a great relationship with Pete Carroll. And there's some other guys he could potentially promote from his staff over in Seattle. He's an interesting name to watch. I just think based on his age, I mean, he's 73 years old, but his energy is like a 45-year-old. I don't know if the Jets are going to want to try to interview him. I mean, he's unemployed right now, so the Jets technically could, and they interviewed Ron Rivera. They're interviewing Rex Ryan and Mike Vrabel over him. So, I don't know. I'd say the chance of that is pretty slim. Where are we? If you really want to go off the mouth, the Jets should be the first team to hire an AI head coach and GM. Appreciate the comment. Let's see, Momo Adamo tuning in. Momo, appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate your support of a new GM and head coach decided to keep Rodgers and Adams. Will it ruffle Wilson's feather, causing him to want to be traded? I think so. I mean, I think there's potential I think there's a potential shot if Aaron comes back and they start force feeding, they start playing buddy ball again between him and Adams. I think there's potential that could happen. Ultimately, though, I can't think of a head coach and GM that would really want to keep Rodgers. I could see Vrabel if I don't think he's going to get the job. He would be the only one potentially. Rex Ryan said on television yesterday that he would not take Aaron Rodgers back next season. So that's something interesting. I think both of them are gone at the end of the season, though. If you really want to make Garrett Wilson happy, go ahead and follow my plan of bringing in Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Justin Fields in free agency, his college quarterback. I think there's an interesting connection there. Let's see. Where are we? This is a good point here, Jimmy Justice Borgonzi give you Bieniemy vibes, long-time assistant, and there's a reason why he hasn't gotten a shot at the top spot. Here's the thing: he's worked up the ranks, which is something really interesting, which I like. But I mean, I wouldn't say this is tough. He's never been a GM in his career before, so it's hard for us to judge what he would look like as a GM. It's fair to say, though, he gives you Eric Bieniemy vibes. Like, Eric Bieniemy was the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs and just never really did anything. He hasn't really moved on since. So that's, I could see why people would lean that direction in terms of Borgonzi, especially since they're coming from the same exact organization. I understand that. Momo. Why would Vrabel want to go to the Pats? Not many good players on that team. I'm sure he don't want to rebuild Momo. It's the most appealing job out here on the market. Not only does he have a connection with the Pats, they have $130 million in cap room this offseason, a top 4 pick and a franchise quarterback. That's what makes it the most appealing job. Where are we? Let's see. taking care of business. If the Vikings move on from JJ, do you think the Chargers take him? I think the Chargers take it. I don't think they're gonna trade. I don't think they're gonna trade JJ. Why would they want to trade him right now? Why would they want to trade him right now? Coming off 2 knee surgeries, you might as well keep him. Have him sit behind Sam. Unless he wants out and he demands a trade, I don't know why they trade him. I wouldn't give up a first-round pick. The most I'd give up for JJ McCarthy is a conditional second right now. I don't even think he was a top quarterback coming out of this year's draft. Michigan never let him throw the football. And he's coming off 2 knee surgeries now, and he hasn't played a snap in the NFL, too. That's the most important thing to note there. So that's interesting situation. Teresa, appreciate you tuning in. Do you think they will need to hire an OC coach or a DC coach? Yep. I think we'll bring in a both offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator this offseason. My preference is Josh McCown as offensive coordinator. Kelvin Shepard's an interesting name for defensive coordinator. Another fun name to watch for defensive coordinators, Ron Rivera, who interviewed for the head coaching position. And Rivera can kind of fit my theory, guys, of what I said about Greasy and McCown. So keep an eye out there as well. Let's see. Yeah, Vikings won't trade JJ. Yeah, let's see. All I hear is negative things about Bieniemy. He didn't call the plays in KC. Yeah, I mean, Andy Reid was calling plays. That's why it's so important to know when you're looking at coordinators. Are they a play calling coordinator, or are they just, sitting there? That's something really interesting to know. But yeah, Bieniemy has had no success since leaving the Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City Chiefs offensive system. Everyone, appreciate you tuning in. Smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I am going to wrap up this show here. Last chance to get in our membership raffle. Appreciate all the support. Smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Free way to contribute to the show. Get your final questions, comments, thoughts in here as I'm about to wrap up this show in about a minute or two. Let's see how many likes we got today. All right, there we go. A lot of you like the video, which means a lot. I appreciate that. I think it looks like every one of you watching liked the video, so I appreciate your support on the show today. Black Monday. Here it is. We made it through the first show of the offseason. Many offseason shows to come, whether it's going to be draft, it's going to be free agency, talking about the head coach and GM search. I expect a head coach and GM to be in here, I'd say 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. I'd expect a guy to be in here. So it's going to be a fun offseason. It's going to be a fun offseason. This is where the Jets and us Jet fans thrive, really. Champions of the offseason, year in and year out. That's who the Jets are. It's, we're always having a fun time until October comes around. My goal next year is I want to be playing a meaningful game by Thanksgiving. Based on what we saw this year, play a meaningful game by Thanksgiving. That would mean the world. Anyways, that's going to do it for me. Smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Appreciate all of your support. I am your host, Connor Long, signing off. JTS, Jets, Jets, Jets.